Now, tonight, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next guest. I think I met Jacques first, maybe 2013, 2015, up in the USA, actually, a TS Summer Convention. And I've got to know Jacques over the years, and he's also visited our section here in New Zealand. And most branches have had the opportunity to hear Jacques speak as well. Now, I'll just go over Jacques' bio. Jacques spent his professional career in the aeronautical engineering industry. He's a regular member of the French Theosophical Society, ARIA, since 1978, and of the TOS in France as well. He's involved in theosophical activities at the international level. He's a worldwide lecturer, the co-founder of a web blog dedicated to the search for the origin of the stanzas of Jeanne. Now, there is a couple of websites that Jacques has given me, so I've asked Danica if she can type those in the chat in case you're interested, but if you miss them, you are welcome to email me and I'll pass you on those websites. And he's also a co-founder of a web-based project, theoscience.org, which aim at collecting and publishing scientific articles relevant to theosophy. Now, Jacques' title this evening is Science, a Tool on Our Quest on the Path. And I just recall that we're 7:30 at night here in New Zealand. You are 9:30 in the morning, I think, Jacques. So just keep in mind that time zone. And I realize it's Sunday. You'd normally be sleeping in maybe on a Sunday. So welcome, and we're just really pleased to have you. So I'll hand over now, Jacques. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Greetings from France, where the climate change is really happening here. We have something like 50 degrees C currently under the sun. So we will have some interesting discussion about those topics. So let's start. Some 20 years ago, our friend and brother, Ravi Ravindra, wrote, "If the intellectuals, both of the East and the West, do not endeavor to forge a right synthesis of science and spirituality, of the Occident and the Orient, of modernity and tradition, this worldwide culture will be based on a very low common denominator, amounting essentially to a lack of ethical standard and of spiritual values." The recent planetary events, like the COVID-19 pandemic crisis and the global climate change evolution status, are quite high-level warnings for the survival of humanity as it is. The COVID-19 pandemic has awakened some consciousness about the necessity of living in a brother-sisterhood attitude to pass through such crises. And it could have been a salutary wake-up call, but as soon as the threat lowered, at least in developed countries, business as usual became again the normal way of living. The level of global atmospheric pollution by end September 2021 are similar to those of 2019. And the preliminary report from climate specialists from all over the world is also very clear that we are heading toward a major planetary human crisis if we do not change our living habits. Science alone, as it is today with its materialistic paradigm, cannot address such huge challenges, and neither spirituality alone, embedded in too many dogma, too many sectarian behaviors, and a long history of human and social abuses. For religions, the mixing between temporal and spiritual leadership has been and is still generating suffering and misery. The core value of their spirituality, which is compassion, love, care for the living, do not have a lot of impact on the behavior of individuals at the scale of the planet. Science today has such a global impact on the social behavior of individual and society that it may be a powerful trigger for changes. But it has to review its paradigm to reorient its effort and goals toward an evolution path in accordance with universal value. A synthesis of science and tradition would give humanity a powerful engine to stay on track with the evolution plan. The landscape that we had a chance to share together some years ago has not really evolved much toward this synthesis, but we can sense some premises. We can see some glimpse of a form of the beginning of reconciliation between both science and spirituality. For the last 10 years, some initiative, some project have emerged from the scientist side to at least open up their mindset toward a larger scope of investigation. And more important, we can now sense more than a report of discrepancies. We are witnessing an organized corpus of scientists who have decided to work together to influence and change the current paradigm toward a more open scope for science. Will it work? Near future will tell us. So let's go back to the 2014. In February of this year, there was a milestone in the evolution of scientific thinking, thanks to a band of vanguard scientists, including among more than 100 notable scientists, Gary Schwartz, Lisa Miller, Mario Beauregard, Rupert Sheldrake, and Charles Tart, who gathered together to advance the evolution and the acceptance of post-materialist science and the emerging of post-materialist paradigm. The summit published a report and a manifesto which summarized their conclusion as: we believe that the science have been constricted by dogmatism, and in particular by a subservience to the philosophy of materialism, the doctrine that matter is the only reality and that the mind is nothing but the physical activity of the brain. We believe that the sciences would be more scientific if they were free to investigate the natural world in a truly open way, without the constraint of materialism and the prejudice of dogma, while adhering to the scientific method of data. The main point of this report provides with key area and subject which substantiate the approach, of which some are very similar to the theosophical teaching. Let's have a look at some of them. For example, the first one said that materialistic science paradigm led to distorted and impoverished understanding of ourselves and our place in nature. Madame Blavatsky told us that the aim of this work is to show that nature is not a fortuitous concurrence of atoms and to assign to man his rightful place in the scheme of the universe. Another one is quantum mechanics suggests that physical world is no longer the primary or sole component of reality, and that it cannot be fully understood without making reference to the mind. Madame Blavatsky told us that atoms are not matter in their collectivity. They are the spiritual sparks on the manifested plane thrown out by the universal soul or mind. Another one about research and study, which indicate that our thoughts and emotion can markedly affect the activity of the physiological systems. And again, Madame Blavatsky told us that half if not 2/3 of our ailings and diseases are the fruit of our imagination and fears. Destroy the latter and give another bent to the former, and nature will do the rest. From that state of the art of current research outside the traditional domain of materialistic science, the scientists propose a post-materialist paradigm, which main features are, it's quite astonishing. They say that mind represents an aspect of reality as primordial as the physical world, that mind is fundamental in the universe, which means it cannot be derived from matter and reduced to anything more basic. And again, Madame Blavatsky told us that the esoteric doctrine teaches that it is this original, primordial, prime materia, divine and intelligent, the direct emanation of the universal mind, which form the nuclei of all the self-moving orbs in the cosmos. Minds are apparently unbounded and may united in ways suggesting a unitary one mind that includes all individual single minds. Sometimes I think they must have read The Secret Doctrine, those scientists. Madame Blavatsky told us that the Secret Doctrine teaches the fundamental identity of all souls with the universal soul, the latter being itself an aspect of the unknown root. And finally, scientists should not be afraid to investigate spirituality and spiritual experiences, since they represent a central aspect of human existence. And again, Madame Blavatsky, they, the scientists, will be driven out of their position, not by spiritual, theosophical, or any other physical or mental phenomena, but simply by the enormous gaps and chasms that open daily as one discovery follows the other one. So here we have a convergence of the old idea about science, which means the theosophical teaching, and contemporary scientific thinking. And it is quite astonishing because it addresses the key question about reality and its manifestation in the physical realms. One can ask why such notable scientists have taken the risk to be ostracized by their community for daring to challenge the existing materialistic paradigm. In fact, it falls from the basic scientific attitude. The scientific community is facing growing challenges with a flow of new findings in particle physics, in cosmology, in biology, in psychology, which do not fit with existing models like the Big Bang, the particle model, etc. And new experiments scientifically driven on parascientific domain like near-death experience, telepathy, reincarnation, are raising questions which cannot be answered by current science. Applying the basic scientific attitude without bias, without dogma, is what has driven the development of this new trend. So it was in 2014. Now let's move to 2019, much more closer to us. Some 5 years later, the momentum of the open science movement is still upbeating, and a new project was launched under the umbrella of the scientific and medical network named the Galileo Commission, Beyond a Materialistic Worldview Toward an Expanded Science. And the project is aiming one step further, which is to contribute to a liberation of science from needless shackles and freeing the public image and discourse about science of illicit limitation and restrictive conception. This, we hope, will contribute to an expanded science that helps us deal with the impending problems, from worldwide social injustice to the depletion of the planet, to climate change and the threat of global economic breakdown. Some 90 advisors from 30 universities are linked to this project. It proposes a minimum consensus model or complementary model in which matter and mind, consciousness, and its physical substrate are two aspects of reality that are irreducible and simultaneously occurring perspective of an underlying reality to which we otherwise have no direct access. This new model might give direct access under certain conditions to deeper structure of reality, which may provide important insight into ethics, meanings, and value. So as we say, some 90 advisors from 30 universities participate to this effort, including our brother Ravi Ravindra. This looks like a sound initiative which deserves our attention and participation. Now, let's remember what Madame Blavatsky said about science and why it participates to the TS movement goal and objective. She said that science is an abstract of every fact, a comprehension of every truth within the scope of human research and intelligence. She also said that in one word, our whole aim and desire are to help in at least some degree toward arriving at correct scientific views upon the nature of man, which carry with them the means of reconstructing for the present generation the deductive, metaphysical, or transcendental philosophy, which alone is the firm, unshakable foundation of every religious philosophy. So on one side, we have the scientific knowledge with its bottom-up methodology and mathematics as its language. And on the other one, we have the revelation brought by the tradition and the human language of the world, together with a top-down approach. Where and how do they meet together? Is there a common ground where they can meet, and where is the bridge between the two in this jungle? We have already identified the main difficulties in such an endeavor. First, the barrier of the languages, highly complex mathematics for scientists and natural language for tradition, which bear the mark of their people and history, up to the inability to decipher many of them. Then we have the paradigm on both sides, materialism versus spirituality, which are irreconcilable and most of the time end up as dogma, which are impairing most of the tentative to reach a common understanding. We have still consciousness is created by matter versus consciousness create matter. And finally, we have the methodology, as we see top-down versus bottom-up. Both are complementary. Their synthesis would provide with a solid mechanism for the discovery of reality. But there is a key point on which they must converge, and that's an important one. There should not be any absolute established truth as a precondition, because any such truth becomes a dogma which is preventing further research. And when the observation do not match with the truth, it is either the observation which are discarded, sometimes with contempt. It cannot be true, they cannot know that, they are not ready for such a knowledge. It could be too dangerous. Or the tradition teaching which are rejected, like anything which cannot be sensed or measured, does not exist. Science says that any model, any law must be falsifiable to be assessed as universal. Tradition pretends to be the true holder of the truth, and there are many. Both seems irreconcilable, but both are talking about the same thing, a reality. Creativity is key when current models are trapped in dead end and cannot describe adequately what is observed and measured. We will need such an approach to propose brand new models capable to translate the wisdom tradition knowledge in an understandable vocabulary for the sake of opening a dialogue with the scientists. From the tradition perspective, we can start with hypotheses brought to us by generation of seers and seekers of the truth, and experiment, test, verify the assertion. This is what HPB told us. She said the occult philosophy we study uses precisely that method of investigation which is termed by Spinoza the scientific method. It starts from and proceeds only on principles clearly defined and accurately known, and is therefore the only one which can lead to true knowledge. So let's have a quick look at some correlation between science and theosophy. And we start, of course, from the three fundamental proposals from the secret doctrine. Let's start with the first one, an omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle. In the domain of astronomy, the observation of the cosmic microwave background, which is the remnant of the early electromagnetic radiation from the Big Bang, reveals an astonishing isotropy, which means a uniform thermal energy spread all over the universe. The inflation theory predicted that the nascent universe underwent exponential growth, which extended almost instantaneously the frame of the universe. All initial particles, quarks, electrons, bosons, created by the Big Bang were all together in close relationships before the inflation. Quantum field physics has determined that any two particles which have been once in close relationships will remain connected together, whatever the distance between them. It's called entanglement. We call it oneness. All particles are entangled. Therefore, they are all interconnected. Therefore, we are all interconnected. The second proposal is about the, let's say, the oneness, the beingness, which is symbolized in the secret doctrine under two aspects, the absolute abstract space and the absolute abstract motion. During the manifestation phase, these two aspects end up as the final phase of emanation as physical space and physical motion. Let's have a look if in our physical universe, what are the correlations with motion? Let's have a look to time. How do we measure time? An hourglass, a pendulum, a metronome, a mechanical clock, an electronic clock, an atomic clock. All these devices measure motion. Time is a measure of motion. If there is no motion, there is no way to measure time. Let's look at temperature. It's the right time to do that. Temperature is a measure of kinetic energy of the atom or molecule in a system. The difference between cold water and hot water is the agitation of the atom. If we take a look at a molecule, for example, that's what it is. An ever moving, an eternal movement of everything. Let's take a look at pressure. As NASA explained, pressure is a measure of the linear momentum of the gas molecule. Again, that's a measure of movement. And a special pressure phenomenon is the sound, which is a compression or rarefaction of pressure, of air pressure. It's a cyclic variation of gas pressure. So pressure is the measure of motion. If there is no motion, no pressure, no sound. Now let's have a look at the concept of mass or energy, because we know since Einstein that there is equivalency between mass and energy. The key element of the physical universe is energy. Honest scientists like Richard Feynman say that we know that we don't know what energy is. It is a scalar quantity which can manifest in many different forms, like electromagnetic energy, gravitational energy, kinetical energy, mass energy, chemical energy. So energy is eternal and unchanging quantitatively, even if it manifests itself under various forms. And again, Madame Blavatsky gave us this clue in her secret doctrine. When she said that the Theosophists, old and modern, the alchemists and Rosicrucians have ever maintained that there were no such things as per se as light, heat, sound, electricity. There is nothing but radiant energy. So now let's have a look at the practical application of this concept of mass energy. Our physical body. It is our companion since our birth until our last moment on this earth in this life. It has some consistency, we can sense it. We can sense some consistency in it, like with most of the physical form. When we look at it with the current scientific knowledge, we see an incredibly complex machine, which is an assembly of multiple systems. We find a structural basis with the bones and articulation, sensor with a sense organ, actuation system with a muscle, respiratory system, irrigation, cleaning system, protection system, and a big computer, the brain and its nerves. The sense organs are in themselves a marvel of divine technology. Let's have a quick look at some of them. The eye. The eye is providing us with a real-time vision of the surrounding landscape. Its machinery include cone cells, which are 7 million, and rod cells, which are 125 million, to detect the various luminous frequency and intensity of the light which hits its surface. Its sensitivity is such that it can detect up to 10 million of different colors almost instantaneously. The magnitude of the response time of the eye cells is expressed in milliseconds. Then these data are transmitted electrically and processed by the brain, which combine both eyes' input to give us a 3D image. So that's a marvel of technology. Let's take a look at the ear. We know that there is 3 stages on the ear, the outer, middle, and inner ear, to transform sounds, movement, as we see, vibration of gas pressure, into electrical signal, which can be processed by our brain. Here also we have an incredible system in the human cochlea. There are 3,500 inner air cells and 12,000 outer air cells. This mechanism allows the perception of frequency between 20 Hertz and 20,000 Hertz. In fact, going in detail inside each of these systems reveals incredible capability, like self-adaptation, auto-repairing, auto-reproduction. It is a magical system. No human intelligence, as far as we know, could design such a wonderful and intricate machine. The recent concept of augmented reality, transhumanism, is a human fancy. Buddhism teaches that having a human body is rare and precious, and that we have the responsibility to take care of it and not to waste its utilization. Let's have a quick look on this physical plan. The physical plan is a plane of reality, often discarded by some tradition as heavy, dark, vehicle of the scene. It is part of the oneness and an important part of it, because it is a plane into which our human consciousness spends most of its active time. If we remove the sleeping time and the meditation period, we still spend almost 2/3 of our waking time in direct contact with this plane of reality. During this time, we are completely immersed into reality that we can see through our external and inner senses. This is where it is important to study ourselves and our daily behavior. We are, on a permanent basis, connected with all our environment, provided we can listen. We have a direct access to any information, stimulus from the world around us, provided we do not filter it as we usually do with our education, our social habits, our own tendency, which are often quite egoistic and binary. I mean, I like it or I do not like it. Maybe we can change this to here and now without anything else, just living a reality as it is, without any expectation or explanation. Now, as long as scientists do not recognize or do not know what is behind the scene of the material plan, they cannot understand how it really works. But because it is a part, it is a plan of reality, not separate from it. It contains many characteristics, many clues for a better understanding of reality. Billions of years of evolution have modeled and remodeled this material through various shapes and history. And the current state of our world, our planet at least, is the result of it, with which we, among all other realms, continue our pilgrimage. Now let's go down inside this material plan into which the divine light is experiencing its manifestation phase. In each part of the material body, there exists a basic component that we call individual cells. They are almost independent organisms, which with their own systems, and they are all interconnected. We have, roughly speaking, 100,000 billion cells in our human body. They all operate on their own, but always as a team. They are programmed, or they know how and when to die and to be reborn, where they belong, what organ, what function, how to breathe, how to digest, etc., as any individual entity. And their activity is totally dedicated to the life and evolution of a greater organism than themselves. They have no other goal in their life but to serve a greater living structure. This is a perfect model for a sustaining evolution path, which has been working on Earth for at least the last 2.5 billion years, since the first sign of life was recorded. Now let's go a little bit inside. We know that in each cell we find microsystems made of micromolecules, which are made of molecules, which are made of atoms. There are less than 100 different atom types in our solar system and in our body. These elements are also the result of billion years of the evolution of our cosmos, many of them being created during the final phase of the life of the big star during supernova explosion. Which means that our body and everything around us is made of particles which were created billions of years ago. If we go further, looking inside atoms, we see more and more elementary components. We know that the atom is made of a central nucleus and surrounding electron, even if the quantum physics would not represent it like that now. And we know that almost all the mass of the atom is concentrated inside the nucleus. So let's explore the nucleus because we want to understand from where our mass is coming from. Inside the nucleus, we find proton and neutron, and we know that each of them is made of quarks, 3 of them in each. This is what the standard model is telling us, even if we cannot directly observe them, because the quarks obey a physical law called confinement, which forbid them to escape from their shell. We finally reach the maybe elementary state of matter, which is endowed with mass, the quarks. We could say that we know where mass is hiding, but there is a trick here. The mass of the 3 quarks in each proton or neutron accounts for less than 2% of the mass of the proton or neutron. So where is the mass? In fact, it's coming from the binding energy called the sea of gluons, which bind the quarks together inside a particle, and from the kinetic energy of the quarks. So in fact, most of the mass is coming not from particle, but from energy. And a moving energy. And we can now imagine, and it's interesting not only to imagine, but to try to live through it, moving from this elementary level back to the scale of our body. Imagine that and sense that our physical body is 98% pure energy moving. And it is this motion, this eternal motion of energy, which creates what we call mass. Which means at this smallest stage of the physical matter that we know, there is no more difference between the unit we are contemplating. Our physical world, including our body, is but a wheel of pure energy. If we were able to contemplate this level of atomicity, we would see, and therefore being completely convinced, like St. Thomas, that we are made of pure energy, which motion is the result of the breath of the divine will. This is how far modern science can have a glimpse of reality. But because it misses the holistic vision of it, it cannot go further. It's now time to go back to the wisdom tradition. The eternity of the universe and the law of periodicity for its manifestation. Let's talk about eternity. The water we drink today, which is vital to any form of life as we know on Earth, is made of 1 atom of oxygen and 2 atoms of hydrogen. The ultimate component of these atoms, as we've seen, quarks, electrons, were created almost right at the rebirth of the universe. Since then, they have combined and recombined many times. So we are drinking water which components are 13.5 billion years old. And this is true for any physical element which make our world and physical body. All particles are eternal. The only thing which is not eternal is the shape, the form which can be assembled and disassembled as needed. Nature is built around eternal building blocks which are molded in shapes and forms relevant to each stage of the evolution by the great architects, from the mineral up to the human realm. Let's have a look at periodicity. The eternity, the law of periodicity for its manifestation. There are many cycles identified by science in nature, like the water cycle, the CO2 cycle, etc. The model of the universe is now challenged by many scientists. There is today a scientific consensus to reconsider the Big Bang as the only model for the genesis of the universe. We are moving from Big Bang to Big Bangs. Let's have a look at the obligatory pilgrimage for every soul in accordance with cyclic and karmic law. Since the pioneer book of Dr. Raymond Moody in 1970, Life After Life, many authors have published a study on reincarnation like Ian Stevenson, 20 cases suggestive of reincarnation in 1974, and more recently, Chris Carter, Science and Afterlife Experience, and Matlock and Erlendur Aronson in 2017 on psychological study of children claiming past life memory. Reincarnation has become a common subject of discussion. The materialistic paradigm still prevents the scientific community from entering seriously inside this area of study until near-death experience came in. The Eben Alexander ND experience in 2012, among many other ones, have shaken some beliefs about life after death, and many scientific studies are now underway to try to find a scientific explanation about the phenomena of NDE. This may be a great opening toward understanding death and therefore life. We do have a lot of correlation between the tradition of the world and modern science. Observations are piling up with no satisfactory scientific explanation. The next step could be discover, retrieve the fundamental laws which support the physical manifestation and express them in a scientific language understandable by all. The key questions are, why haven't we already done that? And the second one is, can we do that? So why haven't we already done that? There has been a lot of effort made by the TS in the 1920s, following the launch by the headquarters of the Theosophical World University, which motivation was a vital need for the introduction of theosophical inspiration and understanding into every branch of human study and research. Many national sections of the TS supported the effort through Theosophical Research Center, and a lot of research and publication have been made. As of today, at a time where mundane science is skyrocketing in terms of advance in discovery and knowledge, acquisition on the physical plan, Theosophical Research Center seems to have lost some of their momentum. Many have stopped their activity, even in large and highly developed countries, and the remaining active cells are barely known outside the theosophical community. Few are connected with a scientific group, and among theosophists, the follow-up and understanding of scientific discovery and model are scarce. This does not mean we have lost pace with scientific knowledge acquisition, because many individual theosophists are active in their scientific domain. It means that as an international group, we are not using the potential synergy which organized group can deliver. Among our international theosophical community, we probably have champions in many scientific disciplines who could develop study group on specific subject using a common methodology. It would enhance the dialogue with the scientific community. The second question is, can we do that? And this is an open question. Apart from the necessary resource and knowledge, there is a fundamental question. The whole process of scientific research and publication information is based and rely on the human mental intellect capability. Is it self-sufficient to unravel the secrets of reality on the physical plan level? And if the answer is no, what can we propose? There are no unique and simple answer to such question. Let me read the 3 quotes who give some clues, but or at least some tentative to answer this question. Can we do that? Krishnamurti said that there must be a totally different movement, which is a non-accumulative perception action. To have a non-accumulative perception is to have no prejudice. It is to have absolutely no ideals, no concept, no faith, because all those have destroyed man, they have not solved his problem. Another quote from our brother Ravi Ravindra. What is needed for objective perception is freedom from oneself. The spiritual aspirant escapes the personal self, not by ignoring it, but by attending to it with total honesty. The perception involved in internal knowing are direct and immediate. Understanding here includes poetic and intuitive insight, as well as empirical and rational consideration. Far from being opposed to scientific and rational knowledge, it opens up even vaster and richer dimension of reality, adding significance to science itself. And finally, let me read Wallace Slater. He said, a change from the present materialistic approach to a spiritual one requires that the whole world shall first be made aware of the problem from a purely materialistic viewpoint, of the rapid use of the world resource by industrialization, by the accelerating increase in population and the inevitable disaster in terms of human suffering if small or large groups compete for the world limited resource. Then mankind may, of its own volition, be prepared to accept that physical comfort shall be subservient to spiritual ideal, that material welfare alone is not enough. It must be balanced by judgment based on consideration for the spiritual welfare of mankind. No prejudice, freedom from oneself, a spiritual approach. A complementary approach seems inevitable. A combination of the intellect skills and a capability to perceive and understand reality from a different perspective than the physical plane. The mental, intellectual capability are quite developed today. So the effort is toward the self-transformation path in order to develop an extrasensory methodology of introspection, meditation, and contemplative practice, complementing sensory observation of correlate of consciousness, like, for example, the neuroscientific study of the brain or the psychology study of behavior. It may take some more time, but it is worth trying. So as a conclusion, we may be at a cornerstone of the evolution of science with the accumulation of gaps in current scientific model and the witnessing of numerous supernormal phenomena throughout the world. Adding to that, the awakening of a community of scientists and researchers who endeavor to challenge and overthrow the current materialistic paradigm which rule most of the research today is a strong sign of change to come. This trend confirms the current acceleration in the evolution plan that we can sense every day. We know the atavism of humankind is a strong roadblock to any change. Therefore, it will take time and up and down turns before a new paradigm emerges. But we can be confident that the momentum is there. Let's keep our eyes open. Thank you very much.